much too loud. Take a look in the distance, try and see it all. Chances are that you might find that we share a common discomfort now. I feel I'm walking a fine line. Tell me only if it's real. Still I'm on.
Alright, hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. We're going to continue with the last few articles of the series, and I've already got some ideas for new videos when I complete all of these article videos relevant to my new book. If you haven't heard, I've got a new book out called The Sleeper Agents, my first book actually. The Rise of Lyme Disease, Chronic Illness, and the Great Imitator Antigens of Biological Warfare. It is a major accomplishment for me. It's actually like my first real accomplishment. I have many talents, but I'm finally at the point in my life where I'm really starting to take hold of who I am, where I'm going in life, and this book was an amazing accomplishment. I mean, I felt driven to do this book. It was like something beyond myself, and I just put all I had into it, and this was the result. But in this video, we're gonna go over this article, Immune Tolerance, the Basis of Chronic Disease Accompanied by Mental Illness and Cancer. Yes. And I'll read some of it. It's a short article, and actually there's going to be another one after it. It's kind of covering the same thing, and it'll be basically the same article in a way, but I'm just gonna explain it again and do another video because it's the kind of phenomenon that needs to be kind of rehashed often for people to get it. Immune tolerance is the phenomenon that is, you can think of it as chronic immunosuppression. And they call it immune tolerance because the immune system is so suppressed that it's forced to tolerate harmful pathogens and toxic material that should otherwise be kept out of the body, and the tolerance allows that central nervous system invasion of these microbes and toxic antigen, integrates, and during that state of immunosuppression, dormant viruses reactivate from within the body that are already in you, like the 8 herpes viruses. Many of those common herpes viruses, like herpes simplex, reactivate. There's also some nasty encephalitis ones, and there's only one of them that is considered the STD. The other 7 are often common, like chicken pox, for example, is human herpes virus 4. Or is it 3 or 4? I can't remember, but I think it's 4. And then there's, of course, Epstein-Barr virus. And that central nervous system invasion, when it's forced into a state of tolerance, the immune system, that's what allows that mental illness, the neurological problems, and the mental, the psychological and neurological problems. And it's becoming so common now, and that's because many of the shots have actually been inducing that. But I won't get into that too much right here because I know, it's going to get me in trouble, and this video will get removed if I start going down that road. But I'm going to find a way to do it without setting off any of the red flags that'll get my videos removed. But it's a serious problem, and it's proliferating society. So I'll read some of it. It says, nowadays, just about everybody has some kind of chronic health problem, whether it is considered autoimmune, fibromyalgia, and joint pain, chronic fatigue, migraines, chronic headaches, brain fog, and many forms of mental illness which now run rampant in society. They are usually attributed to genetic factors or unknown origins. That is, doctors either say it is bad genes or it just is. They won't attempt to get to the root of the problem. They only attempt to mask the symptoms. But what if all of these health problems have a common origin? What if all of these disorders and syndromes are infectious in their etiologies and explainable, even in the face of normal blood work and scans? In today's evidence-based medicine, they would have you believe that there is absolutely no evidence that all of these issues are due to infectious disease. Worse, most of them won't even admit things like chronic fatigue and many of the associated problems exist as anything but a figment of the imagination or depression. And when they call it somatoform when they accuse you of imagining your illness. They call that somatoform. It's an imaginary disease. It doesn't actually exist. It's the cover-up of immune tolerance. They're trying to cover for immune tolerance, so they're telling someone your disease doesn't exist. But it's because the tests that they use do not pick up the immune tolerance phenomenon, even though it's very real. And Erich Traub's entire life was dedicated to that, and immune tolerance was the backbone of his stealth weapons. These immunosuppressive antigens, the great imitator antigen, is why I have that in the subtitle. Because it is found on many things, and it basically, once it causes immune tolerance, you have an entire full spectrum chronic disease that mirrors all the other, like syphilis was called the great imitator, then Lyme disease. But this antigen that's on it, Traub's main weapon was that antigen, and that's what caused immune tolerance. Now, what they did was, Erich Traub discovered immune tolerance in 1936 with the virus called lymphocytic choriomeningitis virus. And he noticed this immune tolerance phenomenon, and actually in my book I have a definition of it I will read to you. It says, a state of unresponsiveness to a specific antigen or group of antigens to which a person is normally responsive. Immune tolerance is achieved under conditions that suppress the immune reaction and is not just the absence of an immune response. So it's toxic antigen that is just completely overwhelming the immune system, and it's, throwing it into disarray, and then you get all the symptoms. And actually, in my article, I drew this wonderful diagram showing how the immune tolerance works. You see, this is an antigen right there, and it's found on all these things that it's pointing to. And then down here, it shows you the process. And I will try to include a link to this picture or something, but basically it causes the immune tolerance, and then you have virus reactivation. Then what you get is secondary opportunistic infections like candida. You get intestinal permeability or leaky gut. You get B-cell immortalization. That means the virus takes over the Epstein-Barr virus takes over the B cells of your immune system and uses it to turn out more virus, like a virus factory, hijacks your B cells. Then virus is established in the nerves and the cardiovascular system, and what you get is meningoencephalitis and neurotropic disease. That's swelling of the brain, and you get you get the neurotropic disease, which is neurological disorders and mental illnesses. Not everybody. I mean, my health is improving just immensely lately. But for a while I was very, very sick. And I had that, the Lyme disease, the protein on Lyme disease causes it. So, in 1960, they basically buried immune tolerance as it relates to infectious disease. What they did was, in 1960, two guys, Peter Medawar and Francis McFarland Burnett, were nominated for a Nobel Prize for immune tolerance. But instead of attributing it to infectious causes, they made it about organ transplants, because the same phenomenon happens in organ transplant recipients, probably because antigen, it's some kind of antigen, probably infectious in its etiology, but causes that same phenomenon, right? And it's kind of like a minor aspect of immune tolerance. When you look at the larger picture, it's actually immensely more relevant to infectious causes like viruses. And actually, Erich Traub was the one who discovered it, but they completely ignored his finding and gave two guys that weren't even nominated together by anybody the Nobel Prize for immune tolerance. They made it about organ transplants. And it's because, of course, if they acknowledged immune tolerance relating to infectious disease, it would have put a serious dent in their entire paradigm of immunology, where they say inflammation is the cause of all disease, and everything that is related to disease is an immune response. This is actually, acute disease is measured by an immune response. Like an acute disease will have a heavy immune response. You'll have a lot of inflammation. But with immune tolerance, it's like the polar opposite spectrum of disease, and it's basically its signature is slow chronic disease. No inflammation, no antibodies, no immune response, but virus reactivation, and it's basically like turning your body against you. And what happens is not just mental illness, but cancer outcomes are very common. And Erich Traub realized that in his lymphocytic chorea meningitis infected mice that were all immune tolerant, there was a massive rise in cancer in the mice. And then he eventually found that in the wild, it got to a 50% cancer rate. So, cancer is a very common aspect, especially like lymphomatosis and leukemia. And I call it the dark triad of immune tolerance: chronic disease, mental illness, and cancer. And that's my other article that I'll go over. But this is, when he had his LCM virus infected mice, what he realized was that they had no antibody response, right? But they were actively infected and could spread virulent LCM virus without any antibodies and without any signs of disease. So it really puts a dent in the Western idea of immunology and infectious disease. And they completely ignored it. And the public health system doesn't even see that as a disease unless you're an organ transplant recipient. And it was done that way to hide nefarious activities. I know if you've seen some of my other videos, it'll make a lot more sense. And if you read my book, it's the entire thing is explained in here. And especially chapter 15, The Legacy of a Sleeper Agent. It basically sums up Erich Traub's work and life, but at the end of that chapter talks more about LCM virus. And I'll read you some of what he wrote, and especially where he said he could raise. Okay, yeah, listen. The interaction between persistent LCM virus infection and leukemia in mice, and to a lesser extent in guinea pigs, has been the subject of numerous publications. We reported in 1941 that lymphatic leukemia was more frequent and appeared at a younger age in persistently infected mice from the Princeton colony than in LCM virus-free controls derived from the same stock. Later, leukemia was also seen in 1 of 2 wild mice persistently infected with LCM virus, which Dr. Haas had sent me from the USA. So, 50%. And when you think about that from the perspective of weapons that cause that, weapons that can raise the cancer rate to 50%. And then you'll see the value of the incapacitating agents, where people say, oh, a slow-acting bioweapon, that makes no sense. Well, when it raises the cancer rate to 50%, that's a serious weapon. Okay, and now there's a interesting quote from one of his best papers that talked about this strange phenomenon. He said, mice, and I inserted some things to change his language so it could be more understood, because he talks very intellectual and it's kind of hard for the average person to understand, so I inserted some things to make it, easier for people to understand. I'll read it. Mice infected congenitally from mother to newborn with LCM virus carry large amounts of active virus in their blood and organs for many months and discharge considerable quantities of the agent with their secretions and excretions. This observation indicates continuous multiplication of the virus in the organs of such animals, which look like normal individuals in spite of their chronic infection. Maternal transmission of LCM infection leads to a stable parasitism between virus and body. It was also observed that mice infected in the womb would develop practically no LCM virus antibodies. And he said attempts to demonstrate neutralizing antibodies in the blood of such animals using customary techniques gave essentially negative results. So you got no antibodies, they look normal, but they're completely infected and flooded with LCM virus, and then raises the cancer rate. And they also come down with neurodegenerative diseases later in life. So And he talked about, and another thing, this virus could pass down generations. So an infected mother who is immune tolerant invariably gave birth to immune tolerant mice. And it could maintain itself through many generations, and as it went down the generations, it integrated more into the central nervous system and became nastier, although they looked like completely normal mice at first and throughout their life a lot of times. So I cover a lot of that in here. And the LCM virus is kind of like an animal model of how the Epstein-Barr virus acts in humans. So, and he discovered LCM virus by injecting intracranial inoculations of a foreign antigen into the brains of mice, which caused the immune tolerance, and then it reactivated a dormant virus, which was LCM virus. And it started destroying the mice from head to toe, silently. And this was the idea behind his stealth weapons. To send in something that could throw the immune system into disarray and then reactivate dormant viruses within the host. That was like the main idea. And so none of the doctors today are knowledgeable about this. They aren't taught about it. That's why you have millions of people now who are sick with these slow chronic diseases, but the medical system does absolutely nothing for them and doesn't pick up any of the disease in their test because they're using the wrong test. They're looking for antibodies. This does the opposite. And that's another major topic in my book, The Sleeper Agent. So I'm going to leave it here. And with that said, I will cover this one. So we're going to kind of rehash this in another article. And I will continue there. So with that said, everybody take care of yourself, be yourself, build yourself, and I will see you on the other side.
Tape full of messages for anyone who cares. Collage of broken words and stories full of tears. Remembering your life, 'cause we wish that you were here. Nothing is harder than to wake up all alone. Realize need a little time. Can we even up the score? Some say this can't be real, and I've lost my power to feel tonight. We're all just victims of a crime. When all's gone, it can't be regained. We can't seem to shelter the pain inside. We're all just victims of a crime. Nothing lasts forever. For all good things, it's true. I'd rather